This is the 18 Strong Podcast with Jeff Pellizzero, episode number 68.
Our motto is hit the next ball better. It's the only reason we ever change anything. Never is it for a swing prejudice or we don't like the look of something. It's never window dressing aesthetic stuff. It's always to make the golf ball go better.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Welcome back, and hope you are enjoying the winter season. It's starting to get cold. Everybody's moving inside. There's less golf being played, but hopefully you're taking this time to get your body in check, get everything ready for next year, and get yourself up and running for the first time you go tee off. It wasn't much later in the season than it is right now, a couple of years ago, when I had the chance to meet this week's guest, who is Chris O'Connell from the Plain Truth Golf. Chris is one of the co-founders of Plain Truth, and I went down to Orlando, Florida for a certification course with him and his mentor, as well as business partner Jim Hardy, one of the legends of golf instruction. And so I got to spend a couple of days with those guys. And over the past couple of years, Chris and I have maintained contact, but just recently I had a chance to spend 2 more days with Chris here in St. Louis at Boone Valley Golf Club and got to see him firsthand working with his students. And it was really cool to just see world-class golf instruction, basically as a fly on the wall, just kind of seeing what he's doing. So if you don't know much about Chris, he's a Golf Magazine's top 100 teacher multiple times, Golf Digest Best Young Teacher multiple times. As I mentioned, he's one of the founders of the Plain Truth Golf with Jim Hardy, and he works with Matt Kuchar, obviously. So there's all kinds of things that we're going to talk about in this episode, from working with Kuch, what that's been like, Chris's playing days, him being on tour playing several PGA events, caddying for guys like Peter Jacobsen, which he did for several years, and just how Chris goes about teaching the game of golf, what his philosophies are, and what his experiences have been working with a guy like Kuch, as well as working with someone like you and me. So hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want more information on this, or you want the show notes for this episode, just go to 18strong.com, search for Chris in the search bar, and you'll get all the notes for that, all the links we talk about in the episode. I do want to warn you, there are a couple little spots of audio that are a little off. We had some trouble with our Skype connection, so I apologize for that off the bat, but hang in there. Chris throws in some gems, and I know you're going to love this episode, so let's get right into it. Chris, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it. We've had a hard time connecting with schedules, but looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I know that a lot of the folks listening, a lot of us know you as, Matt Kuchar, swing coach. You've worked with Jim Hardy and continue to work with Jim Hardy, but I want to know a little bit more about your background as a player, your days maybe at Notre Dame playing, and just give us a kind of a brief intro to you for those of us that don't know as much about you, and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, it's always funny how we end up where we are. I never had intentions of wanting to be a golf instructor. I had intentions of wanting to be a golfer. I grew up not far from you, a little bit north in Quincy, Illinois, and I grew up in a golf family. My dad was a really, really good amateur player. My brother was about three years older than me. He was a really good junior. My mom even played a little bit, not really competitively, but she could play. So we played golf. That's what we did. And my dad never forced golf upon us. It was always our option. And we played all sports too. I grew up in Quincy, which is a huge basketball town. So played a lot of basketball, played soccer, baseball, even wrestled. So my parents just kind of exposed us to everything. And we were, my mom was always, didn't like the fact that my brother and I were always playing some kind of sport in the house, treating the house as if it were our own personal gymnasium. But and I always encourage parents to introduce their kids to other sports. I hate the early specialization, especially with a sport like golf, which is such a sport for a lifetime. It's not like you're done with golf when you're, say, 28 years old or 22 years old. So we played everything growing up, and like I said, my dad was a really good player. my dad was the captain of the golf team at University of Notre Dame, and then my brother was the captain, and then I was the captain. And after college, I wanted to try and play. I just had an early love for the game of golf, and I wanted to see how good I could get. And I played, and I did about as good as earning my whatever my entry fee was, earning that amount back, which doesn't pay any bills. So after a few years, I was actually set up to caddy for Peter Jacobsen. And I had caddied maybe 2 times on the PGA Tour, and there's a little bit of a learning curve there. So it was caddying for such a high name player like Peter was quite an accomplishment. And D.A. Wybring, who's also from Quincy, Illinois, is a family friend of ours, and he's the one that set that up. It was supposed to be a 1-week deal, and 1 week turned into 3 years. And in that actually the first week I caddied for Peter, I met a guy named Jim Hardy. And up until meeting Jim Hardy, I didn't believe in golf instruction. I didn't really think that mechanics mattered. I just thought it was kind of you either had the gift or you didn't, because I'd see these kind of crazy looking swings that hit the ball really well and won golf tournaments, and I'd see these other swings that I thought looked really good, and those guys struggled to make cuts. So I didn't really understand. It was kind of a mystical big unknown to me, is that golf instruction. When I grew up, we just kind of figured it out, and whatever clubs you were given, you figured out how to make them work. You didn't get on a launch monitor and get a driver that had the right loft. Shoot, I had my mom's blue wood, so too long, and so DA set me up with Peter, and then Peter, I ended up meeting Jim, and Jim, the first time I met Jim Hardy, I realized, wow, this is different, because he explained to me that there's not one set of fundamentals, there's 2 sets of fundamentals. And then the second thing that really got me, being an impatient person, was he told me, when you take a golf lesson, you should get better right away. It should not be it's going to take 6 months, you're going to get worse and go through pain before you improve. So the 2 things that struck me with Jim were the fact that there wasn't one set of fundamentals, and now I could kind of understand how 2 people could look so different and still be proficient. And then the fact that he said, I think you should get better right away. So
since you mentioned the 2 fundamentals and mentioned Jim, first of all, Jim Hardy is a legend in the game of golf and is one of the top teachers to ever be in the game. And so give us an idea of what it's been like just having him as a mentor, learning from one of the best and being a business partner to him now. And then we'll dive into those fundamentals a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know where I'd be in my life if it wasn't for Jim Hardy. He's like a second father to me, and it's just been great. And he's 72 years old, and I feel like I'm trying to keep up with him. I'm 30 years younger than him, and he's trying to get better every day. He's always pushing himself, never blaming the student, always pushing himself, trying to figure out a better way to communicate, an easier way for the person to do it. And so, I started when I was caddying, I was still trying to play at the time. I would play when I wasn't caddying and play in my off week. So I took lessons from Jim, for probably during those 3 years, and then I quit caddying and tried to play full time. So I took lessons from Jim for 5 or 6 years, and just would try to glean as much information as I could. And I kind of didn't. I was a curious person. I kind of wanted to understand the totality of it, not just as it applied to me. And I would go down there, and he wasn't really that busy at the time. He hadn't even written his first book at this point. He was busy doing golf courses, but in terms of golf instruction, it wasn't really doing a whole lot. So I'd go down and spend time with him and his wife Marilyn, and it'd just be golf boot camp for 3 days, 4 days, and so over that time, I learned a lot. And when I finally decided that playing wasn't in the cards for me, I knew I wanted to stay in the golf business, because I just love the game so much, and started thinking, what do I think I can do? And I had kind of accumulated a lot of information to where I thought, I might be able to help some people with that information. And then Jim and I ended up forming, a few years later, we ended up forming the Plain Truth, which we do golf schools and instructor certification, and Jim and I teach a number of tour players together. And I help him with some of his content. He has a new book coming out. It's going to be on the releases. It's basically there's 2 different ways to release the golf club. I'm really excited for it because it's original information. I hope it'll be people be as excited about it as I am. And we also have a third guy in our group, Mike Crisani, who I went to school with. Mike's kind of our business development IT guy. So without Jim Hardy, I would not be teaching golf. I can promise you that, because prior to him, I wasn't really a believer that that it was something I'd be interested in. So,
as I mentioned, we see Matt Kuchar swinging the club, and we know that, Chris O'Connell is Matt Kuchar's instructor. He's the one Plain guy, Plain Truth guy. And so I think a lot of people look at Matt's swing and they think, okay, that's Chris's model. That's how Chris is going to teach someone how to swing. But you mentioned there's 2 sets of fundamentals. Let's dive into, what are those fundamentals, and, where does Matt fall in that? And then when you have somebody come into one of your schools, your clinics, what do you look for, and how do you apply those fundamentals?
Yeah, so it's good to be known for something, and I'm known as Matt Kuchar's coach, and Matt's been amazing to me and my family. He's been very, very appreciative, and has done wonders for us. And so Matt and I have had conversations that he's improved and had a nice run, a great run year in and year out. And Matt joked to me one time that if his swing were more aesthetically pleasing, he said, you'd be teaching 10 guys out here. And I found that interesting. Now, to me, Matt's swing is aesthetically pleasing because my whole mission is to make the golf ball go better and to make it go better, more repetitive. So I think Lee Trevino has a great swing. I think Jim Furyk has a great swing. I could name, I'm not going to, but I could name some really pretty swings that hit the ball kind of all over the place that I don't call those. So my definition of a good swing is one that produces, that is functional. But Matt's saying that Matt's swing has some peculiarities about it. And again, when we're looking at a swing, we say there's 2 different swing categories, 1 plane and 2 plane, or I could call it upright. I could call the 1 plane flat and the 2 plane upright. Or I could say you swing your arms around your body, and then in the other one you keep your arms more in front of your body. And those are 2 general categories. I think when Jim's book came out, people looked at the book and they said, if you don't do all 26 things or however many elements he listed, then you're not a 2-planer or you're not a 1-planer. And that's just not true. Most people have a mix. Most people have some elements of both. But what you're trying to do is figure out which one you have more elements of and then start getting rid of those elements and making you more of a pure 2-plane golf swing or more of a pure 1-plane golf swing. And those are general categories to where within those categories, there's probably 1,000 variations or teaching methods that are 1-plane, and there's probably 1,000 variations of 2-plane or teaching methods that are totally viable. There's guys in the Hall of Fame who don't do everything Jim says, and they're still 1-planer, and as well with the 2-planer. So I think some people get hung up on modeling, and we are anti-model. We're known as 1-plane, and half of everything Jim's ever written is 2-plane. So we're showing that there's 2 distinctly different ways to do it. And I teach a lot of 2-planers myself. I don't have any 2-planers on professional players. And Jim teaches, we get 2-planers in golf school. Shoot, we leave them 2-planers. So when we look at a swing, we just kind of look at what does he have more elements of? Which is he closer to? Is he closer to more of a 1-planer where you swing your arms around, bend over, swing your arms around your body? Or a 2-planer, you stand more upright, keep your arms and club more in front of you, and then your body's more passive. And so we're looking we're looking for the biggest opportunity. We're looking for the easiest road to help that golfer play better golf. And if I switch a golfer from a 1-plane to 2-plane or vice versa, I've got a lot to change. Now I'm going down that road of you are going to get worse before you get better, and it's going to be a long time before we play good golf. And so we're looking. Our motto is hit the next ball better. We look at it as if I can look at your golf swing, and we teach a little bit backwards. We don't teach off a model. By that I mean, if you teach off a model, you look at a swing, and everything that doesn't fit your model, you just start changing. We look at the ball flight, and then we look at the impact. And we say what's undesirable about that. Is the ball too low? Is it hooking? Is it not hit solidly? Is the divot too deep? Is it fat? Is it thin? What is it? What is the issue this particular golfer is struggling with? And then we look at the swing and we say, okay, now what in the swing is causing that impact that's causing that ball flight? So we're always, the only reason we ever change anything, never is it for a swing prejudice or because we don't like the look of something. It's never window dressing aesthetic stuff. It's always to make the golf ball go better. And sometimes, the industry you're in is sometimes if you teach off of a model and somebody physically can't do what you want them to do, that's going to be a very painful experience for both the golf instructor and the golfer. And so in our system, because we do instructor certification, let's say you have somebody who, they cannot stay in their spine angle. They're not physically capable of staying in their spine angle. Well, guess what? If they can't stay in their spine angle, they should be a 2-planer. A 2-planer keeps their arms more in front of them. Their spine is more upright. You don't want the 2-planer to be bent over a lot. So in our system, when I say system, a system of how we educate our instructors, our team of instructors throughout the world, is don't sit there and keep trying to pound a square peg into a round hole. Go ahead and let's adjust. Let's realize that this person can't do what I want them to do.
Yeah,
and unless we're going to get them in touch with somebody like you, we got to switch. We got to go with one system over the other.
Well, that's what, I've had the chance, obviously, to spend some time with you, and you were here in St. Louis not too long ago. We spent a couple days together out at the beautiful Boone Valley and worked with a couple different guys, and each one of those guys had very different swings. And, what I noticed is you kind of looked at each guy, looked at their ball flight, and each guy had something that was a little bit different that he was working on, and it wasn't like you were trying to make them all look the same or swing the same, because they were very, very different models that you had to work with. But each guy we saw their ball flight and then made a couple changes, and when they did a couple things the way that they were trying, they saw improvement. And that, I love the hit the next ball better. And going through the certification, because if the listeners don't know, I am Plain Truth certified. Well, I think I was maybe one of the first, if not, I don't know if there was any other physical therapists or fitness guys that are Plain Truth certified these days, but I had the chance to go spend some time in Florida, and I got to see you guys work on the driving range, and it was, okay, look at that ball flight. What did it do? What do we want to maybe change it to, and how are you going to do that? It wasn't, okay, we got to get them swinging flatter, or we got to get them, coming out lower. It was, let's look at the ball flight first, and then let's figure out what one change we can make that's going to make that better right away.
That's right. Yeah. We're always looking for the biggest opportunity. And so for me, the biggest opportunity is going to be in the downswing. If I cannot tell the person anything in the dress or the backswing, I'm not going to, because I want the area of the swing that actually has the golf club going towards the ball and towards the target, to where that's where I can most directly influence the flight of the ball and the impact. Now, sometimes their setup may be hindering a good downswing, or even the top of the backswing. They might arrive in a place where they're out of position. But as a general rule for me, is the better the athlete, the more accepting I am of kind of a mediocre backswing. If I do have an athlete, somebody who's not a good athlete, or somebody who's maybe never played golf before, now I kind of need to get them into a functional top of backswing. But as a general rule, I can get the biggest bang for my buck in the downswing, because that's where I can most directly influence what the club's doing to the ball.
You mentioned something about the better the athlete, the less important. I don't want to say less important, but the less you would necessarily look at their backswing. And it reminded me of a comment that you made when we were on the driving range, and you said something to the effect of, when you're working with Matt, you can give Matt a piece of instruction, and it could feel really weird to him the first one. Mm-hmm. The second one feels a little weird too, and then like by the third or fourth, he's implemented it. And if you gave him that the day of a tournament and he liked it, he's going to use it. Yeah. I mean, is that what you see with the higher level players compared to some of the more amateur players that you work with?
Well, so working with a really good player, say one of the best players in the world, you have a positive and you have a negative. Yeah, negative is there isn't a ton of room for improvement. Positive is they're going to be able to do whatever you ask them to do, because these are some of the best athletes in the world. Your high handicap player, a lot of room for improvement, might not be able to do what I ask them to do. So, no matter who you're teaching, there's a positive and a negative there. Now, with Matt, you got to understand who you're working with. Some people are slow to change or resist change, or are slow to trust change. Matt Kuchar, as I've gotten to know him over the 8 or 9 years we've worked together, if he doesn't like how he's hitting the ball, and I give him a different thought or a different feel or a different drill, and this might be an hour before he tees off at a PGA Tour event, it might feel bizarre to him, and he will look at me like I've just fallen out of a spaceship asking him to do this. And he'll hit one, hit it good, hit two, hit it good. And then all of a sudden, on about the fourth, fifth ball, he said, that doesn't feel so bizarre anymore. So if a person gets rewarded for something that is going to feel different, I mean, if it doesn't feel different, you're still making the same motion and expecting a different result, and that's insanity. So it needs to feel different. It might even feel bizarre. It might feel something you've never felt before in your life. But if we're trying to improve and we're trying to become a different golfer than what we are, we need to experience something we've probably never experienced. So, but the minute he gets a reward, he said, doesn't feel so bizarre anymore. I can do that, and he'll take it to the golf course. He really will. So if he knows whatever he's doing is going to help him hit the ball better, he's on board. What's really hard in golf is, and I would take some lessons growing up, is something when you were told to do something which felt very uncomfortable, and you hit the ball worse, and that's really hard to keep doing, because there's no upside there. You might as well feel comfortable and hit the ball bad. So, but he's a model student for me, because I don't have to beat around the bush with him. If I think there's a way for us to get better, I can tell him, and he's very good at processing of what he is capable of doing and what he isn't capable. Like he will, if I ask him to do something and he can do it, but he can't do it repetitive to where he can go out and shoot a score, he will say to me, I like what you're saying, but we need to shelf that and we need to come back to that. And so he's amazing at being able to prioritize. And some people, you tell them to do something, and then even if they can't quite do it, now they think, I have this fault in my swing, I have to change it. And now they can't go back. And so Matt is really good at it when he goes to the golf course, processing the information and getting a game plan of what he's going to be doing swing wise that's going to give him the best opportunity to shoot a score. Might not be the ultimate for him on that day, but he knows that it's the best he has for that particular day.
In your experience, because I know you do several different ways of teaching your golfers. You do individual lessons. I'm sure you do some people where you see on a pretty regular basis. And then you guys also do your golf schools where you do it at different clubs around the country. What have you found, or have you found a pattern that one seems to be a little bit better as far as getting people to understand it quicker and start doing it faster? I mean, like, so your schools versus individual one-on-one lessons, because the school is kind of like almost like you said with Jim, like a boot camp. And what we had out of Boone Valley was pretty cool, and I saw some drastic changes in these guys. And I got to hit a few balls, and you looked at my swing, and I don't want you to tell anybody what my swing looked like. But, I saw a lot of improvement in a short period of time with these guys. But do you notice that there's then a little bit of a drop-off after that because, you get that quick learning right away? Or do you feel like the individual lessons seem to be a little better or worse as far as the learning curve?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think generally when somebody makes a change, I don't see that they overdo it. I see that they tend to fall back a little bit. And so a lot of what we teach and we encourage in the golf schools and in private lessons is, listen, you can try to do this as much as you like. You can try to exaggerate it as much as you like, because I find that most people will fall back into kind of their default or their thumbprint. And so with us, we're always trying to help the golfer become their own coach. We're not looking for a golfer to be dependent on us as coaches. And so we're coaching them through ball flight, through impact. We're talking to them a lot about feel. When they hit a good one, what did you feel? When you hit a bad one, could you feel your default? So the way we learn is we need to understand what our default is, what we're currently doing, what we're trying to overcome. And then we need to understand kind of what is the opposite of that. What does that feel like? And so we will do a lot of letting the person make the motion the correct way and letting them make it the wrong way, kind of the yin and the yang, so they can kind of distinguish. And then we're coaching them through ball flight. If you hit it fat, here's what happened. And we're really, I see bad shots as a better opportunity for somebody to learn than good shots, because on the bad shot, I want to know if they can feel their mistake. Because that's how we learn. But we're trying to, it takes a little time, but we're trying to get them to take ownership and get them to somewhat coach themselves. But we look at it as it's a journey. I mean, golf is there's so many games within golf. You've got putting, and you've got short game, and you've got short irons and long irons and driving. I mean, there's so many games within the game that you almost never finish, but we're looking at it as a journey, is always trying to improve. And when somebody's a 23 handicap, I don't have illusions of them becoming a 2 handicap. Not anytime soon. They're a 23. I want to see if I can get them to a 20. Within a reasonable time, within say 3 or 4 months, and then I want to see if we can get them down to an 18, and then 15, and on and on. I'm not looking at a 23 handicap like I'm going to turn him into a tour player. Possibly over time we can get him down or her down to single digits or low single digits, but I think too often in golf lessons with higher handicappers, we don't take them. We don't take them in short increments. I mean, it should be when you are working on your golf swing, there'll be ups and downs, but over time there should be more ups and smaller downs, and to where you're always climbing and always improving. And that's where golf gets fun, is when you feel like you're becoming a better version of yourself.
All right, I got a question. I know you've got 2 young daughters. And you mentioned earlier on in the podcast that, growing up you played a ton of sports and you went out and played a bunch of golf. What do you recommend for those of us that do have young kids that are, kind of getting into the game?
Yeah.
What direction do you take them, as far as, do you give them a little bit of instruction and just kind of let them figure it out? What do you recommend?
So that's a great question, because obviously I've always been interested in that, but then when you have your own kids, you even get more engaged, and you don't want to screw it up. And,
right.
My parents never pushed me to play golf, so I'm not going to push golf on my kids. And I used to make the mistake. I used to say that if my kids choose golf, then great. If they don't, then great. And I had a friend of mine said that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm not gonna, because I had friends with parents who pushed them, and sure enough, the kids burned out, and there was resentment towards their parents. And guys said, that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. He said, you owe it to your kids, to your daughters, to teach them how to play golf. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be a good player. It doesn't mean they're going to go on scholarship to college or play professionally. He said, but it needs to be like a subject they learn in school. It's something that you owe them, to where it will be something that they do. They might not be great at it, but it will be a hobby that they can do. And so that kind of changed my mind on it. He said, listen, you go, it's once a week, you go for an hour, and if they want more, then great. But if they don't, they're going to go, and they're going to take, there's certain classes I didn't want to take in high school, and I had to take them. So that really rung with me. But my girls are young right now. They're 4 and 5 almost. And right now I have one goal in mind for them, and that's simply I want there to be a strong association between golf and fun. That's all I care about. And right now, when I mention the word golf, they get excited, because golf isn't what you and I think it is. When we go play golf, we get a Gatorade, we get M&Ms, we feed ducks, we drive the cart, we play in the bunker. We might hit, if we have a long practice session, we'll hit 4 golf balls. But association is so important for me with golf, because golf can be somewhat of a monotonous, boring game. I think you're seeing junior golf, the way it's taught, change dramatically. Used to junior golf camps, you lined a kid up, put a huge bucket of balls out there, and he hit balls for an hour and a half. Well, kids today, they won't do that. We do junior camps here. My lead instructor here in Plano is Jake Sandusky, and shoot, every 5-6 minutes we're doing something different. We're throwing footballs, we're kicking soccer balls, we're having relay races. Just all kind of, we're sprinkling in golf. But golf is a slow-moving sport, and so I want there to be strong association between golf and fun. And later on, they can get serious about it. I'm not looking for my girls to be really good golfers when they're 8, 9, 10 years old. I want them to be really good when they're, if they so choose, when they're, say, 16 or 17, when they're getting ready to go to college and start playing more and more competitive golf. And
what about your wife? Does she associate golf with fun?
She does, but that's only because the only golf she experiences is Top Golf. So if I asked her to go hit balls, she'd say, look at me like I was crazy. But if I say you want to go play Top Golf, shoot, we're going. So
nice.
Top Golf for the listeners that don't know about it, it's amazing deal. It's basically like bowling and a video game, and they've turned it into golf. And man, they get 7. I think it's 7 out of 10 people that go there have never played golf. And it makes golf fun. It makes you can play for an hour, hour and a half. It's not a 4-hour deal, and so they're killing it.
I've heard that place is incredible. Haven't been to one yet. We don't have one in St. Louis yet.
I think they're growing. I think you guys are probably on the list.
I think there's one in KC, and I've heard rumors of possible St. Louis, but nothing brewing just yet.
Yeah.
All right, Chris. Last couple questions.
Yeah.
First one: are you a Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore guy?
Caddyshack.
I had a feeling.
Yeah.
All right, and then what do you have that most excites you for the end of 2015 and upcoming 2016 season, either with what's going on with you and your tour players, or with Plain Truth itself?
Yeah, and that would be the release of Jim's book. It's called The Releases. I just think that I think it's going to help people understand their golf swing, and most importantly, understand the most important part of the golf swing. You could have a perfect biomechanical golf swing, and then if you have, say, a faulty release, you're not going to hit the ball very well. So this is diving into really the heartbeat of the swing which is how you deliver the club to the ball. And we've worked hard on this thing to try to get it right. We're actually self-publishing, so we have complete control of content and photographs, stuff like that. And so it's taken us a while to get to where we want to, but I hope people benefit from it.
So you've had the opportunity to work day in and day out with one of the legends of golf instruction. If there was another person that you could either, and you've been around the best of the best in the PGA world, if there was somebody, both past and present, that you could either ride in a cart with for 18 holes, carry a bag, or even just play around with, who would it be and why?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I'd have to go with Ben Hogan. That'd be a popular choice, but Ben Hogan, because I think he arguably had the most control of his golf ball over anybody in the history of the game, and playing with inferior golf balls, inferior equipment, and inferior course conditions. And I think he figured it out on his own, without video, without force plates and K-vest and all that stuff, which is great. Pretty amazing, though, that we're talking about, say, 60, 70 years ago. And he figured that out, and I'd love to have conversations on the golf swing with him, because I think we would have a lot in common as to what we felt was important and what we felt wasn't important. We've talked a lot about the release and how that's dealing with the downswing area, and how important I feel that is, and how important I feel it for everybody is the sooner we can get people working on the downswing, the part that actually hits the ball, the better, because that's where we can really start to improve our hitting. And funny story with Ben Hogan, David Frost, who was on the Ben Hogan staff, had lunch with Ben Hogan, asked him if he'd watch him hit some balls, and Ben declined, said, I'm a player, I'm not an instructor, and I'd sure hate to give you anything that might potentially hurt your game. And David said, well, I understand, can I ask you a question about the backswing? And Ben kind of looked at him and said, Sonny, I've never seen anybody hit the ball with the backswing. And so and so I think we'd have a lot in common as to what was important and what wasn't important in a golf swing. And just talking to him about, he was one of the best players of his era, no doubt about it, prior to his change. After his change, he became, in my opinion, the best ball striker that the game's ever seen. And so talking to him about the before and after would be priceless.
What exactly was the change that he made?
Well, he was like I said, he's one of the best players of his era, but he tended to hook the ball, and he detested a ball that hooked, because he just couldn't control it. And his change, and he talks about it in Time magazine or Life magazine, to where he talks about in the backswing, where he tried to rotate his left arm clockwise, and he tried to cup his left wrist. That's in a backswing. But what happened for him was the way that he then unwound that. Because I've seen people with an open club face at the top still hook badly. So that wasn't the secret. But what it did for him in the downswing changed his career. He was fighting a hook, and kind of talking to different people and reading different things. He basically told the guys on tour that he wasn't coming back out until he got rid of this hook. He had just come down the stretch of a tournament, lost the tournament hooking the ball, and said, you may never see me again. And so he starts thinking about it. He says, the more I try to hold the face open in the downswing, the more it uncontrollably slams shut on me, and I hook. And so he kind of thought about it and said, well, you dummy, how about I try to reverse that? How about I try to open it as much as I can in the backswing and close it in the downswing? So he put himself in a position at the top where if he didn't close it, he was just going to hit the ball straight right. And he just had it so open, what felt open, so open and cupped, that if he didn't actively release the golf club or let the golf club go past him, he was just going to hit the ball off to the right. And he ended up, and then he talks about it, that he tried it, and he said it worked like a charm. And he said, I went to bed that night, and I couldn't wait to get up the next morning and try it again, because so many things I had tried had a short shelf life.
Right.
He said the next day I tried it, and it was even better. I hit the ball higher, I hit it further, and it was just a beautiful little fade. And then it's chronicled from there. He goes on to Chicago, Tam O'Shanter Open, wins by, 12, and then he goes Hershey and wins by like 14. He said, I knew I was onto something. So, and that's kind of what we believe, that we believe that you can have that kind of change that quick. We just need to figure out what is the fault and what's the field to overcome that fault.
Nice. All right, Chris, any last words of wisdom for the audience? And then let us know where we can find you and follow more on the Plain Truth.
Yeah, words of wisdom. People are always asking who's the next up-and-comer. There's a kid, I don't teach him, but he'd be nice to teach because you wouldn't have to tell him anything. You'd just say, just keep doing that. Patrick Rogers out of Stanford. I think this kid's going to be a real player. Good head on his shoulders, extremely long. I mean, they're all long now. There's long and longer now. But I think you'll see him do some damage. Very talented player. We are at our website's plaintruthgolf.com, and then we're on Twitter as well, and we've just started a Facebook page as well. You just search Plain Truth, and you should be able to find us there, no problem.
All right, we'll link it all up in the show notes, and everybody can go check out what you guys have going on, find out where your golf clinics are, and all that good stuff up in 2016. Chris, can't thank you enough for coming on, man. It's always a pleasure to get to see you, talk to you, hang out, hit some balls, and can't wait to come down to Dallas. And we promised we'd hit a few balls. You'll look at my swing, and I'll buy a couple beers for us.
Yeah, I'll do that. That sounds like a good deal for me.
All right, man. Thanks again.
All right, Jeff.
Chris has easily become one of my favorite guys in the golf world that I've gotten to become friends with, and is just one of those guys that you can bounce ideas off of, and is such an intelligent instructor, and really looks at things from a very objective point of view, and will give some great feedback as far as why he's trying to do something with a player, what he's trying to achieve, and then just from a physical standpoint, kind of kicking around ideas too. So I hope you enjoyed that episode with Chris O'Connell from Plain Truth Golf. If you want more information on Chris, or you want more information on 18 Strong, the show, just head on over to 18strong.com. Like I said, to get Chris's show notes, just search for Chris in the search bar. Otherwise, browse around the site. We've got plenty of videos. We've got tons and tons of podcasts with awesome guests on there. So check that out. There's always a free gift on there for you too. So look around the site for that. Otherwise, we appreciate you being here. Hope to see you next week. Train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.